the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. Today, I am sitting down with an MSer from the state of Washington. Karen has had MS for 31 years. That is 4 years longer than me, myself. I've had 27, so I'm really excited to have her on the show just to explain her journey with MS, and we can compare notes, being that we are around the same amount of time. But please welcome Karen. How you doing, Karen?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on today, and for all of you that are listening to this podcast, welcome.
Thank you for joining me, Karen. I always appreciate people that want to talk about their MS journey just to help understand this disease a little bit better. Just because I think that there's just so many different roads that you can go down with this disease. There's primary, progressive, relapse, remit. And you've had it for 31 years, and it just blows me away because I know that there were only 3 DMTs back when I started in 97, and you were 4 years before me. So just kind of take
different world,
right? Take us through your path on how you even got diagnosed back then.
Okay. Well, in 1994, I was pregnant with my daughter. And when I was pregnant, it was wonderful. It really was. And then when I left the hospital, I just didn't feel right. And I went to see my doctor. And they told my family that I had postpartum depression. And they said, when you get home, just be nice to her. Don't leave her alone with the baby. And I just kept saying, I just don't feel well. And it just continued until my mother-in-law was staying with me then because I just wasn't feeling well. And when she walked out of the bathroom one day, she said she could feel the heat from me. I had a very high fever. She had me talk with my doctor, which I thought I was talking fine, but I was mumbling the whole time. Mm-hmm. They sent me to the hospital. And after that, I was never right again. I just didn't feel well. My hands started cramping. I couldn't talk. The left side started to go numb, starting by the side of my mouth. I worked in a kitchen, so I thought that it was my fingertips were numb because I thought it was because I was cleaning the ovens and not using gloves like all the oven cleaners tell you to do.
Sure.
And I just kept getting worse. So I went to my doctor, which he said, you need to see a neurologist. And I was like, okay, I'll go see a neurologist. And off I went. The neurologist, I did an MRI. And after that, my husband was with me. The doctor came in and he said, you have multiple sclerosis. You have a plethora of lesions on your brain. I had no clue what that meant. Totally.
How old were you at this time, Karen?
I was 30. I was 30 when I had my daughter. At 31, I turned in that October.
31.
Going towards the end, yeah.
And you had
31.
And you didn't know what MS was at that time? I know I was 27. Yeah. I was 27 when I got diagnosed, and I had no clue either. My only thought back then was I knew Annette Funicello that had MS. And I always thought of a wheelchair. You know, I didn't realize that there were so many different avenues that you can go down So did you get diagnosed with relapse remit?
I did. And like you said about not knowing about MS, I mean, I got in the car with my husband and I said, well, at least I have Jerry Lewis, which he sweetly looked at me and said, oh, baby, you don't have Jerry Lewis. And I said, I don't have a telephone. And he said, no, you don't have a telephone. I'm like, what do I have? I had no clue what MS.
Yeah.
I think I just kind of tuned out as the doctor was talking in the room because I have no idea why this is happening.
Yeah.
But when the MRI came back and the neurologist was like, yep, you have multiple sclerosis, the whole bit, and we'll get you on a medication. But right now, it's called beta seron, but right now it's in a lottery. And
yeah, you were telling me that. So wait, I want you to explain that because I mean, you were diagnosed 4 years before me, so I'm 97, so we're talking 94, 90, right around there. You're getting diagnosed.
94.
There were.
Yeah, I found out the first part of the 95. So
there
it's
were.
hard for me to think I was diagnosed in the first part of January of 95, but I knew I had it. Something
right
after I had my daughter, so I always say 94, 95.
Right. But, so I know that back when I got diagnosed there were 3 DMTs. 4 years earlier, how many DMTs? There was only the one beta seron. It was
just beta seron then.
And this is the interesting part. Go into the lottery part because I never even knew that a lottery existed.
Well, it actually, they had too much demand for the product they had. So they came up with an idea in 94, it might even have been 93, but I know for sure 94, that they would put it on a lottery. And those that have MS that want to get in this lottery and they would somehow choose from there. I don't know exactly how they did that. And when the doctor said you'd have to win the lottery to get the medication, I just shook my head and thought, I can't even win scratch-offs. How am I going to win a lottery?
I couldn't imagine.
I'm so confused.
I couldn't even imagine.
Luckily,
I couldn't imagine the mental health part of that at 30 years old, being told that you have to win a lottery to get on a DMT. That is just mind-boggling to me.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
And luckily, it did come off the lottery soon after this, so I didn't have to win anything. I got the medication. It was a subcutaneous shot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do that because my husband did that. And I was on within 7 months of having symptoms. Now, I've heard of many people that have gone through years and not been diagnosed.
Yep.
So I do feel very lucky that the medicine came off of the lottery and that I was diagnosed very quickly. They told me I had a plethora of lesions. Again, didn't know what any of that was. Just work through it. I know how long I've had MS because I always go, how old is my daughter? And she's 31. So 31 years I've been dealing with MS. She's never known me without it.
Yeah.
So
my kids have never known me without it either. And I know that had to be a scary part of your life too, when you were just newly diagnosed. Because my son was 2 years old when we had him, or I'm sorry, 2 years. I was 2 years into the disease when we had my son. And I was scared, because I'm like, I was still very new to this disease, and I wanted to be there for my kid to grow up, growing up, and I wanted to be able to play with them and run and play baseball and football, all that with him. And that was a scary time for me because you don't know, and how did you handle that part of being a young mom and newly diagnosed?
Lots of tears, actually. Lots of confusion, not knowing what the next day was going to bring. because it did get worse before it got better. The
Yeah.
MS. I couldn't walk very well. I spent a lot of times being pushed in a wheelchair. I was so tired. It felt like everything I tried to do wore me out. I had to give up breastfeeding because I just couldn't stay awake, and my breasts got enlarged and engorged. And the doctor said, let's stop that. And it just seemed like all my plans for I also had a 12-year-old. My son was 12 years old when I was diagnosed with MS. And he was amazing. He helped with the baby all the time. My husband, jumped in and also helped my two in-law mothers. So his biological mother and his stepmother both came and helped me tremendously with the baby. My sister flew in and helped and actually got me to be able to give myself my shot because I wanted to be independent.
Right.
And she said, I bet I can work with you and we'll get this done. So
yeah.
Thank you, sister, if you listen to this. Yeah. And so I was on beta-seron for a couple of years. The one thing that I thought was interesting is because it's a beta-seron, they assumed right away that you're going to get depression. So they put you on an anti-depression drug.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
So they immediately put me on Zoloft with the beta-seron. And that, I think, helped a lot with the actual depression I was feeling. Yeah. I don't know if it was the medicine or it possibly could be both. I had this baby, this 12-year-old. We had a house that needed taken care of, and suddenly I can't function.
Right? Yeah.
I had a job I loved, so I had to work with that.
How did you make that adjustment?
And it was in Orlando, Florida, too. So the heat would take me down all the time.
Yeah.
Anytime the humidity went up, I went down for the count. Okay. I couldn't function at all when that was happening. I had to stay in the air conditioning. Somebody had to start my car for me so I could go right into my car, drive somewhere, go right into a air conditioning building.
Yeah.
Because the heat was my enemy.
And being in Florida, that's not a good thing. So, so is that how you ended up in Washington? You just had to get out of the heat?
Oh, I wish. No, my husband got a job up in Redmond, Washington. They brought him up here. And we decided to move, not even thinking about the heat, but thinking about the wonderful job he was going to get, or they offered. So we came up to Redmond, and he started working. My mother-in-law moved up with us and helped out until my father-in-law moved up and my in-laws, and we kind of brought them all up. She helped me so much with the baby, and
so you had a lot of awesome support during the early part of this, and that is such a huge thing.
I agree.
It's very important. I mean, I had a really good family support too when I first got diagnosed, just in the understanding that, hey, this is a disease, and they had to learn just like I did, really, and I'm sure your whole family, they probably had to learn just like you did. You were the one learning as the actual participant, but they actually had to learn about it. And that's just an awesome thing that they were totally on board. And that's so important for somebody that gets a chronic diagnosis like us.
Yes. And before I was diagnosed, I think we all thought I had a tumor, or I was, it was something that I was not going to make it. And so we just all kind of stopped talking and went through the movements. And I was scared. I was so scared. And I'm sure they were as well scared. Nobody knew what it was, why everything was happening the way it was happening. We had no clue.
Yeah.
And to find out what it was great, but still learning what is multiple sclerosis. And again, in 94, 95 is very new to, I didn't know anyone that had MS at that time.
Neither did I. I mean, I was 27 and I just finished running a triathlon, and I figured I was indestructible, and you find out real quick that you're not, and it's a humbling experience. That diagnosis, it kind of opened my eyes up, and I say now it was kind of a blessing. I know it kind of sounds screwy to say that MS was a blessing, but I mean, it actually opened my eyes up just to see what else was going on with people around me. That they were going through issues in life too. And I think it opened, my feelings up for people that were suffering with Parkinson's or fibromyalgia or, chronic migraines or something.
Any of the autoimmune disorders, that are out there. And even with those, nobody really spoke about them.
No.
I mean, now you hear more about it, and I know what POTS is, and all kinds of autoimmune disorders, and what they're going through is very close to MS, and there's no cures, which is another very sad sentence to say.
Yeah, it's a frustrating, mentally draining, knowing that there isn't a cure right now, and I know that you got 31 years in, I got 27 years in, and I know that I was under the impression when I was 27 years old that, okay, well, hopefully in another 10, 15 years, there'll be a cure. And here we are 27 years later, and they're still not any closer.
Right.
They just got more DMTs. They do have more DMTs, which is a huge
thing.
Definitely a huge
thing. So many more.
Yeah.
Which, when I first found out, we did the MS walk, and my doctor, neurologist at the time told me, do not go to any other places online but the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, because they have the information and you go there. And I'm glad I did, because there was other scary stuff out there that I didn't want to take in at that time. Right. We did the walk. I figured a cure is coming quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know what I thought, but I do know that I found out that, I don't know how to say this, I guess, is that there isn't just one kind of MS. Even inside of relapsing remitting, everybody has a different MS.
Yeah.
Because one thing, where did the lesions land in your brain? Where did they happen? In what part of your spine? Are they active? Are they not active? So everybody is different. So when I would see somebody in a wheelchair or just, progressive, I thought, oh, I'm going to be that. When I saw somebody doing really well, I was like, oh, I can be like them.
Right.
And I couldn't figure out how to get to those that we say, oh, but you look so good.
Right.
Because it's so different. To compare yourself to anyone else is hard. Yes, we all have MS, but I think we all have a little bit of a different type of MS.
Yeah.
So, were we on drugs? Drugs, I guess, and the shots or whatever earlier, the pills, or, how are we taking care of this? Are we, there's so many different things. And I ran a self-help group for many, many, many years. And the people that walked through the door were so different.
Yeah.
And I have very close friends that I met through the group. I probably would have never known them if we didn't all have MS.
Yeah.
Talking with them was the best for me, because I could hear what they were thinking, and I could put it out there. I'm scared about this. And they're like, oh, me too. And you finally found somebody that knew about MS.
Yeah.
I used to tell people when they came to the meeting, because they're like complaining, my husband doesn't get it, or my wife doesn't understand my MS. And I would just say to them, that's a good thing. You don't want them to get MS.
Right.
And the only way to really know MS is to get MS,
Right.
to have it. So give them a break because they think they're doing the right things. And you're thinking, why do you say that?
Yeah.
If you knew my MS, you would understand. And I don't think you know MS until you get it.
Yeah.
And then you talk with other people that have MS because they get it. They understand.
They do.
And that's my closest friends are people that have MS and understand what I'm saying.
Oh, I agree. And a lot of the people that I know with MS, like you, I mean, I consider you a friend of mine because you get it. We've only had a couple of conversations, but they've been like 1.5 2 hour conversations because it just flows so good because you understand everything that I'm talking about and I get everything that you're talking about as far as the mental health part of it or the physical part of it. And the one thing that I know that we totally agree on 100% is the mental part of it, that you got to almost have an attitude with this disease and you can't let it control your mind so that you just sit there and feel sorry for yourself. You got to pick yourself up and keep on fighting every day. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. It's sometimes minute by minute. Minute by minute.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to come out of my mouth. See, let's change it. Just every hour something changes or it doesn't change.
Yeah.
Or you go, is that a new, especially as I got older, I'd be like, is that because I'm getting older? Or did I just have a different symptom of MS?
Right.
So who do I call? Do I call my neurologist? Do I call my GP? Do I just let it ride for a while to see if it's going to be one of the two?
Right. Yeah, I know. I totally get it. I mean, my wife actually gets frustrated with me a lot because, I'll be like, I'll have a twinge or something somewhere and she's like, what's wrong? And I'll be like, I actually don't know. It could be my knee. It could be MS. It could be just because I'm getting older. I honestly don't know. I mean, yeah,
that makes complete sense. Yes, I had a boyfriend one time that said to me, "Could you, why don't you tell me when these things are happening?" And I said, I would be doing it all day long. Oh, well, my bladder just acted up. Okay, well, my hand is like twitching. I have a tingle that just went down the whole left side of my body. You don't want to hear all this.
Nope.
You don't want to hear it. So a lot of times I try to ignore it, the pain or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to just, okay, I know that side of my body is having pain. I'm going to be happy on this side. So sounds completely crazy, but
so let me ask you this, Karen, because this is interesting. Because I mean, we kind of had the same mentality with it. I always kept everything in, whether it was pain or just the way I was feeling or mentally or whatever. I always hid it. But I don't do it anymore. I'm 55 years old and maybe it's just because I'm older or whatever, just because I don't care anymore about this MS thing. I've been doing it so long, but I know that when I was younger, I didn't want to talk about my disease, even to my wife at the time. We ended up getting a divorce, but it was hard for me to talk about because I didn't want to feel like I was weak or, I had problems, with pain or anything. I didn't want anybody to know that. So I kind of hid it from people. And I think that was wrong for me to do that.
I think I talked with people because I wanted to educate. I wanted to educate everybody that would listen to me about MS. I want everybody to know that MS can cause this and do this. And I think the other thing I would do is someone would say, oh, my fingertips feel a little numb. Oh, you should go to a doctor because you might have MS. I had everybody convinced I was convinced that they had MS because I wanted them to get therapy or whatever they needed right away.
Right.
And they'd be like, I don't think I have MS. Well, just ask your doctor when you're there. But I had no clue. Then most of them did not, end up having MS. And I had to hold back because I just wanted to educate and tell people what I was going through, but I also didn't want them to pity me.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why I kind of kept it in a lot because, I never wanted anybody's pity. I wanted them to understand it, which
Mm-hmm.
and it made me frustrated that a lot of people didn't. But,
Right.
I didn't want to talk about it. And I think that was a wrong thing for me. When I was young in this disease, I should have talked about it a lot more. I should have probably talked about it a lot more with my kids. I did bring my
Mm-hmm.
kids up, and I didn't teach them to be afraid of my MS. Like my kids used to take turns putting my Capexin needle into me and pressing the plunger and all that, because
Oh,
I didn't want them to be, why dad's doing a shot every day, what's wrong with that?
right.
I kind of
What's wrong with
incorporated
that?
that, but I didn't ever tell them that I'd feel like it makes me feel bad. And I think I should have introduced them to that a little bit sooner because it's a lot harder when they're older, now they're 18 or I'm sorry, 22, going to be
Right.
23 and 26. I probably should have expressed my feelings a little sooner, but
Yeah,
that I think everybody, if they could have done things a little bit different, they would do them a little bit
totally.
different, and that's
I
one
could
of
go
mine.
back.
Yeah, and that's one of my things. But I mean, it is what it is. I got two great kids now, anyway, so it all worked
Totally.
out. It all worked out. But
Well, I also tried, I had a friend that told me stop shitting on myself because I would say I should have made dinner and I should have done this and I should have done that. And she would say, stop shitting on
yeah,
yourself. You did the best you could at the time that you could do it. And like I say, my daughter never knew me without MS. I took her to every event. She knows almost as many people with MS that I know because she was always with me because I wanted her to understand when mom says, I am tired and I can't do it, it's not because I want to watch TV or hang out or I'm lazy or anything. My MS is making me tired
right.
and I need to get this sleep to be able to do the things that we want to do together.
Yeah.
And she would, look at me sometimes and just go, Mom, you're zapped. And I'm like, what? And she's like, I just saw your eyes just kind of glaze over.
Yeah.
You need to go lay down and relax.
They can
And I'm
actually
like,
tell. They
she
learn how to
gets it.
tell. Yeah. Wow, that is awesome though. That's awesome that your kids are like that in tune with it. And that's a huge
Mhm.
help for you too. That's just great
Yes.
that you have that. So you started out with the Imbagio, and we kind of like detoured off topic. And what I
Mhm.
know that
With the beta seron,
yeah. Oh,
actually.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but what
That's okay. It
what
was in there.
so after you got into, you said a couple of years on that. What did they? There's
Right.
still only about three of them out there. I was on one of them, Capaxon.
Right. I went from beta seron and then I went on to Avonex
Okay.
because beta seron was giving me bruises all over my body.
Hmm.
Bad enough where my job actually was talking to me, trying to find out if my husband was abusive. And when I realized we were talking about the medication bruises, and I was not telling people at work that that was going on.
Mm.
Because again, I thought I'd lose my job
Yeah.
and I didn't want anyone to know. Then I went to Avonex, and that's the muscle shot.
Yeah.
And I could not do a muscle shot, jabbing it in my leg or my stomach. So my husband would do that. And I, would joke that we're going to get along for a long time because he gets all his,
Frustrations out.
issues, frustrations out by giving me that shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went on Avonex. That was one to come out soon after.
How'd you do on
Being
Avonex?
like a couple years. So I did okay. They were worried about the dents that were coming in my legs and like, but I seem to be doing fine. Then after that, Copaxone came out.
Yeah.
I loved Copaxone.
So did I. That was my best. That was my best DMT. I made it. That was 15 years. I was on Avonex and I only made it a month on that one. It made me so sick.
Oh,
I couldn't do it. I would do that shot on Friday, and I was sick till Sunday night. And I told my neurologist that I
no,
can't do it.
no.
And he changed me to Copaxone, and I loved Copaxone. I mean, it sucked doing it every day, but it was
Right?
my body tolerated it great, and I did great on it.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing I had is I felt great on Copaxone, but my MRIs didn't look great.
Hmm.
So I switched, the doctor talked me into switching to Rebiff.
Hmm.
And on Rebiff, my MRI stayed stable, but I didn't feel right. I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
So that's a dilemma you go with. Well, okay, your MRI is getting worse, but you feel fantastic.
Yeah.
And but if I go back to the one where the MRI is tanking, it was just a dilemma for me to figure it out. So I went from the Copaxone to Rebiff and then back to Copaxone.
And how did you do when you went back to Copaxone? Did you feel better?
Felt great again.
See,
And the MRI was not as good. And it was like, no.
Here's my point in that comment, though. Because I went through similar conversation with somebody that had MS, and this was like when I was like 5 years into it, and they asked me how many lesions I had. I don't know. I said I don't know. And the next time I saw my neurologist, I asked him, and he said, "What does it matter, Brian? You're still upright and walking, so why do you care?" And I said, "I don't know. Everybody knows how many lesions you have." Or they have, and he basically said, "Don't worry about that. Worry or be happy that you are upright, walking, moving around, and you feel good. Don't worry about the MRI." And that's the way I kind of left it after that. I still to this day can't tell you how many lesions I have on my brain. No idea.
I don't think I've ever known how many I've had. I know I have a very large one that was probably the first time on my right side of my brain, and it affects my left side. And I know I have other little ones in many, many places, but I don't think we ever counted them.
Yeah. But you're doing good. So you're back on Copaxone. You're feeling good again.
Feeling good, yes.
And where are you at after?
Then I I left my husband. That's for us feeling really good, which is he's still a good friend of mine. And started dating another gentleman that actually gave me his insurance for group health. And I went to group health and I had an MRI, and I told them that I hadn't been on medication for a while because I couldn't pay for Copaxone. I didn't have insurance, and I didn't have Medicare yet, because I had to leave my job during that time.
Yeah.
I was working for a large internet place in Redmond, Washington. But anyways, I had to leave there. And when I went to group health and saw the gentleman, then I talked to my boyfriend, and he said, "That's interesting that your MRI is stable, but he's going to put you on a new medication.
Yeah.
Why don't you call him and ask him how much an MRI is and how much the medication is?" I'm like, "Where are you going with this?" He's like, "Well, if you could stay off the medication because your MRI is stable, then you could save some money and not, but then tell them that if you start feeling bad, you'll go in and have a MRI and you will go right back on medication." And I called the neurologist at Group Health and I explained that to him. And he said, he started laughing. And I thought he was laughing at me saying, "You're crazy. You're going back on the medication." He said, "Well, I've never been asked that before. Let's try it." At that time, I was also riding bikes around the lake. I was eating very healthy, very pure food. I was sleeping when I needed to sleep. We had chickens for fresh eggs, different things. I do feel that all played something into this. So for 4 years, I didn't go on any medication.
Wow. Okay.
And I was feeling good. I started feeling my MS was perking up. I don't know if that was due to stress in my life or not. They put me on Polarity. Polagrity, yes, I guess it's, yeah. And with that, I seem to be feeling fine. And but one of the side effects was depression. And I started hearing a little voice telling me that I should commit suicide, which was huge because I did not feel that way. I'm a very upbeat person. And they were like, nobody, the little voice was like, nobody will care. And I'm like, of course they would care. And so the nurse came out. I was so glad she did. She was making house visits, and she came in, and I whispered to her that I was thinking of killing myself. And she panicked. She said, stop, don't take any more of that medication. I'm calling your doctor right now.
Wow.
And she called the doctor, and they said, take her off of it.
Wow.
So Polagrity is on my, that it was probably a great drug, but it gave me a side effect that was not good for me, obviously. So then the doctor put me on Vermirity, and it does have
that one.
Vermirity is kind of the next one that came out is after Tecfidera.
Okay.
Tecfidera had lots of side effects. Vermirity has side effects of heartburn, stomach problems, and many other things. But what I learned is if you can take care of the symptoms of the medication, then the medication is okay. It depends on what those side effects are. So I'll kind of back up. The side effect for me, for Polagrity, nope, not a good one. Nope. Right. But Vermirity, I take it right now. I take Tums, and I take heartburn medicine, and I make sure that they even tell you what you should eat when you're taking it. If I follow that path, I'm doing well with it.
Awesome.
I don't, no. I think we discussed about the people who come up to me and say, "Oh, you're on a new medicine. How's it working for you?"
Right.
And it's very hard for me to say, is it working for me?
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm stable. I've been stable with that MRI up until yesterday when I did an MRI.
Yeah.
Yes, stable. I still, and it's not cured. My MS is, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, my MS is not cured. I still have those lesions. I still have those symptoms of my MS. But the medication that I take every day for my MS, I'm hoping it's what's keeping things away from doing any damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all we can do is, we got to trust the medications. And like I tell people, there's some people that do the holistic thing, and I'm all, you got to find your own path and which one's best for you and customize your treatment on how you do it. But I tell them, there's no way in the world I'm too scared to go off of a DMT. I've been on it too long, so I just trust the DMTs. And my last one was Mavenclad. And I haven't had an episode in over 2 years. So is it working? I guess. Yeah. I mean, I haven't had an episode, so I'm happy about that, and that's a good thing. I'm still upright. I'm still walking. I have to use a walker. I have to use a cane. Sometimes I have to use a wheelchair, but I'm not going to ever quit. I'm not ever going to give up. And if a med stops working, I'm going to find another med.
Yeah. And there's plenty to choose from now.
Yeah, there's a lot more than there were 31 years ago and 27.
And and Vermirity's an oral drug, which was awesome because it's like, oh, I don't have to worry about me giving myself a shot or someone else giving me a shot. I heard Copaxone has gone to 3 times a week. We used to have to do it every day.
Right. I know it. I think I did an episode with somebody that was on Copaxone, and they said 3, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'd had to do it 7 days a week. That's not bad at all. But yeah, I mean,
I think that's where I heard it. I was listening to your podcast.
Okay.
Everybody check out his podcast.
Yeah. I mean,
And I was like, wait.
I tell everybody I've had this disease 27 years and I'm learning something new every time I talk to somebody because our paths are so different. And it's like a DMT thing. And I try to tell as many people as I can, just because you're on a DMT today doesn't mean you're going to be on it next year. I mean, sometimes that's a journey in itself. Just going from DMT to DMT. And I've been into Sabri before, and and some people are on that now, and they're doing great on it. For me, I didn't like the way it made me feel. So, I mean, it's a individual journey, the DMT thing. And I just try to let people know, I can't give you advice on it because what works for me might not be good for your body.
Right. And we don't know what's working for each person.
Right.
And that's where you make sure that your team of people and your neurologist knows his MS.
Yeah, absolutely.
He knows what drugs are out there, and he has seen many patients.
Yep.
So he kind of can figure out, let's try this. And I trust the man in fact, we're talking about me changing right now to Tecfidera because they put a law in effect for the medications that you pay $2,000 when you're on Medicare. You pay $2,000 a year. That's it. So I used to get my Vermirity from Biogen for free because I was being stubborn and said I'm not going to pay for an MS medicine when I'm having stable MRIs. And so I was getting in on I couldn't afford it. And I was like, I just can't. Well, now they've done away with that free for the Vermirity, and you pay $2,000. And I'm like, in fact, I have less money than I did back when I was, going to be stubborn.
Yeah.
But now he says that Tecfidera is cheaper than Vermirity. So we're going to find out what the prices are and see if Tecfidera is, if it's just like Vermirity, then that might be what I switch to. If not, I will figure out how to get the $2,000 a year, and we will move forward on that because I will stay on an MS drug.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the MS drugs that I've been on, actually, I think pretty much every drug that I've been on, they got a copay assistance with it too. A lot of times you got to ask your neurologist. You're like, hey, is there a copay assistance for Gilenya or for Paxson or whatever? Yeah, there is. You got to fill some paperwork out. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of help with these medications, but you got to do the research on it.
That's something I didn't know in the beginning either.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had great insurance up till 2004. Yeah. And Medicare, tries to do their part.
Right.
And so you just go back and forth and think, it's really what's the best for you financially, medically. It's just be radically curious. Just keep going and looking into these things and finding out what's out there, what helps out there.
Yep.
Because that's a lot of things I find out later and I go, what? Who's paying what for what? And who's helping out people with MS? And I'm like, okay. I wish I would have known that before I bought XYZ. But so just look into it, talk with people that have MS. That's where I find out the most information.
Yep, absolutely.
The MS community knows their stuff.
They do, yeah. Whether you're on a Facebook, find them on Facebook, find them on TikTok, Instagram. There's so many communities out there, and I mean, they're awesome. People with MS, especially people that have had it 31 years or 27 like me, 25, 20. I mean, we're all in this to help people. I haven't met anybody with MS that has not been all in on trying to help people that are new to this disease, just trying to help people understand it better.
Right. Yeah.
Karen, I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Is there anything I want to give you one last shout to anybody that's out there listening that's in that's in the newer part of this disease, and just from your experiences that you have gone through with your DMTs or the mental health part of it, just anything that you want to give anybody out there listening, any advice?
My best advice, and sometime maybe in the future I can tell the story why I feel this way, but MS tools, look into them. I used to think, being a scooter or a walker or using a freezing vest or anything was making me look weak.
Yeah.
And I turned my paradigm, turn that thing to, no, it's not. It's helping me get through that day or that moment and use those tools because it makes your MS a lot less difficult.
Yep.
That's one thing. For me, getting on a DMT as soon as I was diagnosed, I think is amazing. The other thing, let's see, managing symptoms. I mean, there are freezer vests for those that can't take heat that will bring them right down, or humidity. There's medicine for fatigue that helped me tremendously. It wakes me up in the morning and I can go through my day and not sleep the whole day away.
Yeah.
And my last thing I just would say is let yourself laugh. Let yourself cry. Talk with others that have MS because they actually understand. But don't hold back on the emotions or hold back on your stories because people can learn from other people's stories. So that's all I have. I could go on and on, as you know.
Oh, I know. We can go on and on, Karen. I mean, that was just beautifully said. I mean, everything you said, I agree 1,000% with. And talking with people that have had this disease for a while, just pick their brain, whatever part of the brain that they have left, pick it and let them, they'll tell you what it's like. I'll give you any experience I have on any of the DMTs I have. I'm not saying it's going to be the same way for anybody else out there, but I'll tell you anything you want to know about this disease because it's just, I want everybody to know what it's like. Whether you have the disease or you don't have the disease, all you got to do is listen and learn, and you can understand it a little bit better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Learning more and more. It's like MS has been my degree for 31 years.
Yeah.
And I learn something new all the time.
Oh my God.
And I go, whoa. Yeah. Look, I like that. I'm stealing it.
Yeah. That's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, listen to as many people that have this disease, and you're going to learn a lot. I got 27 years in. I'm still learning every time I do one of these podcast episodes. Just hearing other people's stories, it's so much valuable information if you just want to listen.
Yes, yeah. I agree 100%.
Yeah. Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you just helping me to spread awareness and using your 31 years of experience in helping explain this disease a little bit better. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am at MSMichiganMan64, and on TikTok, MSMichiganMan64. You can also find me on Facebook, Brian Wallace out of Brunswick, Ohio. Until the next episode, MS Michigan Man 64, Brian, I am out.